Hey guys, I hope everyone's staying safe during this time of quarantine. So, what I plan to do in the next couple of days is I'm going to be making some small projects aimed at beginners. So, if you're a beginner, well, this is the tutorial for you. So, today, what we're going to be making is we're going to be making a simple game of tic tac toe using only HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So, this is what the game looks like. Let me just show you guys how it works real quick. X is next, O, X, O, X, and if someone wins, these become red, and it tells us that X is the winner. We could reset the game, and so on. And as an added twist, we're also gonna make this semi-responsive. So if I go down, it shrinks like this, and it's still fully functional. And if I go down a little bit more, it is still functional as well. So this is what we're gonna be building. For full transparency here, I have based the color design of this on Google's Tic Tac Toe game that you see here. I just Googled Tic Tac Toe, and this is like the game that they came up with. So this is what it's based upon. But we are not gonna be relying on anything for this project. Again, we're gonna be building everything from scratch. So if you're pretty scared of web development and such, this may be a good start for you. All right, let's get started. Hey, a quick interjection before we begin. I've made the GitHub account for the finished project already here. So links of this GitHub repo will be in the description below. And pretty much, if this will give you all the finished code. So if you go here, you can see, for example, the app.js file, the index.html file. So if you get stuck or lost or anywhere, reference this so that you can use this. Also, I'm gonna be showing you guys a blueprint that I've been using to kind of give me the CSS of all the important parts so that we don't waste time doing all these and all the colors that we're going to be using. So it's all down here. So if you guys want a copy of this JPEG file, just go here, go to the blueprint.jpg, and you could just do download. And you could have this as a reference as we code this along. All right, back to the video. All right, so I have my WebStorm editor open here. You could use whatever editor you prefer, whether it be VS Code or whatever. I personally prefer WebStorm, so I'll be using that. But follow with me. I have created here an empty folder. So do that as well. I've called my folder Tic Tac Toe, but you could call this whatever you want. And within this file, within this folder, we're going to be creating 3 files. HTML file, a CSS file, and a JavaScript file. And those are the only 3 files we're going to be working with. So let's create those right now. I will create a new file called index.html. I will create another file called style.css. And finally, I will create my JavaScript file called app.js. So these, again, are the 3 files that we are going to be working with. Let me zoom in all of these. And now that I have these open, I don't need my left panel. So let's start with our HTML file. So if you're using VS Code, you could do this too. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the boilerplate HTML file here. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to use emit. So you could put an exclamation point and click tab. And it should automatically create what you see on the screen right now. If you haven't, you could pause the video and just write this down. But I'm just going to click tab. There we go. I want to change my title to maybe Tic Tac Toe. And let me just open up a preview here. And right now, of course, it's an empty file. We didn't put anything inside the body, but that's good. Let me just make this smaller a little bit. Okay, so let's get a basic framework of our app right here. We'll be putting in the logic later, but before we do that, actually, let's link our CSS file and our JavaScript file. So above the title, I'm gonna put a link ref. The ref will be href, will be style.css, and make sure you put rel is equal to style sheet. And also right above my closing body tag, I will put a script tag with source app.js and make that an empty tags like so. So now we have our style sheet connected and our our JavaScript file connected. So let's first go to our style.css, and I'm gonna put some basic resets that I always personally like doing. So I'm gonna put a select all selector, which is with this asterisk sign. And I'm just gonna make sure that all my margins are 0 and all my paddings are 0. This is just what I personally like to do on all my projects. And not only that, I want to make my box sizing a border box instead of the default, which is a content box. If you're not familiar with what this is, don't worry about it too much right now. You could Google it if you want, but I won't be focusing on this, so don't worry too much about that right now. Now, let's go back to our index.html and let's start putting some tags in. So I am gonna put my game, my Tic Tac Toe game, in a div called a container. So let's do that first. We'll do div, I'll put a class of container, like so. And by the way, just to make my life easier, I made a little cheat sheet here that gives me like a blueprint of all the things that I need to know. I put a lot of the CSS stuff here because I don't want to be playing around and wasting your time figuring out the best margin and padding. So we're going to be using this as a reference. By the way, if you want this is a PNG file, this is an image file. If you want this later, at the very end of this video, I'm going to put a link to my GitHub of the finished repo of all the finished code. And I will have this blueprint.png file in there too. So if you want to grab that, go to my description, go to my GitHub page, and you could download this from there. All right, so let's first stylize our container. Let's go back to our style.css file. Let me see. Oh, whoops. Style.css file. Let me zoom in real quick. I'm also going to do a little bit of something else too. So, whoops. I am going to put my body tag here, and I'm going to put my font family as sans serif. What else should I do? I am also going to make my body a flexbox. So I'm going to do that by putting a display flex. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to center my game in my application, in my screen, I mean. And what I have found is using Flexbox is probably the easiest way to do that. And I am going to put justify content as center. So this will put everything in the center. Let me just show you guys right now. Let me stylize this container as well. Right below my body, let me put container tag, getting the container class name. And I will, let's see, what should I do? I will put the background color to, going back to this, I'm going to be using my primary color, which is this greenish color that you see here, 14BDAC. So, and just for now, I'm going to erase these attributes later. I'm just going to put a width of maybe 500 pixels and a height of 500 pixels as well, just to see my blue in action. There we go. So this is what we have so far. Notice that this greenish box is centered on the screen, not vertically, but horizontally. And the reason why it is centered like that is because of our display flex in our body and also the justified content of center. Just to give you guys a reference, if I put flex n here, for example, as an attribute of justified content, it goes to the right. And if I do flex start, then that is a default and it goes to the beginning. But what we want is center. Now, just to make sure that we're not covering the beginning of the board is not at the very top of the page, let's do this. Let's put, I don't think there should be 0 here. I think there should have been 25 pixels. So for our container, let's put a margin of, actually, I think it was 50 pixels. Sorry about that. So let's put 50 pixels for margin, and padding, let's put 50 pixels as well. I think that's what I had initially. Not only that, I want my border to be a little curved like this. So let's put border radius is going to be, let's see, 25 pixels maybe. Yeah, so that seems about right. Whoops. And let's continue. I'm going to go back to my index.html file. And within my container, the first thing I have is this Tic Tac Toe title. So I'm going to be using a h1 tag, and I'm going to give this a class of, let's see, just title. And we will write Tic Tac Toe, 3 words. Let's see that. Okay, so notice this is not centered. As a matter of fact, I want my default color. Right now, my default color for my text is black. Why don't we make it that little, not a black, but like a dark color that you see here. So the way that I'm gonna do that is go back to my style.css. Within my body, I'm gonna add a color attribute. And I'm gonna be using this black color that you see here, 545454. Like so. So if I refresh, notice it's a little bit of that. It's not black anymore. It's a little bit of that dark gray color. And let's center this. So the way that I'm going to center this is I'm going to grab my title selector, my H1 tag, and I'm going to put text align center. Like so. Now, what else do I need? I think that's it for now. Right below the title, and before we go on, notice the tag in the title is the white color, right? So let's do that too. The way that I did that is I first went back to my index.html, and for my tag, I put a span in there, like so. And going back to my style.css, I'm gonna grab that span, and the way that I'm gonna grab it is first within the title tag, right? The title class, and I'm gonna grab the span like so, and I'm gonna make this color the white color that you see here, which is F2EBD3. Let's see if that did the magic. There we go. So that looks pretty good so far. And the next thing that we're gonna grab is, the next thing that we're gonna design is these two things right here. So we have this part right here that tells you the status of the game, whether X is next or O is next. Or it tells you if a game is a tie, you'll see game is a tie right here. Or if someone won, you'll say X has won or something like that. So I'm gonna call this a status, and this button, I'm gonna call it the reset button. But both of them are contained within an outer div container, which I will call, let's go back to our index. What should we call this? I will call this status-action, because it is a container for both our status and also our action buttons, which is only the reset button that we have here. And within this class, within this div, we're gonna have two divs. The first div is gonna be called status, whoops. And let's just write this first, X is next inside here. And the next one, I initially thought about putting a button like so, but it's kind of stressful to stylize our buttons. So I'm just gonna make this a div as well. And I'm gonna call this div, let's see, what should I call it? I will call it the reset div, like so. And I'll put the word reset in there. So it will be a div, but we're gonna kind of connect it to our JavaScript to make it more function like a button. So let's see what we have so far. I'll go back to my preview, and this is what we have right here. Let me zoom in for us real quick. And taking back our style guide, let's put some of the styling into our style.css. I'm gonna first grab the container that contains both the action button and the status div, which is called status-action. And we're gonna give a little bit of a margin top here to separate it from the title of 25 pixels. And also we're gonna put a font size of 25 pixels as well to make it a little bigger. There we go. So keep in mind my screen right now on the right is zoomed in. So yours will look a little bit smaller than this. But we don't want them stacking on top of each other, right? We want them kind of next to each other like so. So the way that I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna make my status action div container a flex container as well. So display flex, and let me just refresh. Now notice that they are next to each other, but that's not what we want. We want them kind of spread apart. So I'm gonna add a justified content, which spreads them out. We have a couple options here to choose from. What I want is space around, which will put the spaces of here, the left side of the first element, the middle in between, and the right side all in equal spaces. So I think that looks pretty nice. Now let's see what we have as well. Let's stylize our button by doing this. I'm gonna grab our button, which is, what is it called? Reset. And I'm gonna make it act like a button. So I will put a cursor of pointer. What that would do is when I hover over it, my cursor will become a pointer to let the user know that this is a button. And not only that, when I hover over it, by using this hover attribute, I want the color to change. And the color I want to change to our white color, which is F2EBD3 that we use up here. Like so. So now when we hover over it, it looks white to let the user know that this is indeed a button. Obviously, if I click on it, nothing works right now because we didn't configure our JavaScript yet, but that's fine. We just want to get the basic UI down. Excuse me. Okay, so now we want to make this grid. So the way that I'm going to make this grid is I'm going to be using the CSS Grid. So if that is new to you, don't be afraid. This will be fairly simple. What we are going to do, first of all, right below our status action div, we're going to make a new div, and we are going to call this the game-grid div. Game-grid. By the way, this is image, shorthand for image. If I click tab here, it automatically makes me a div with a class of game-grid. So that comes very useful if you haven't seen that before, by the way. And let's see. Within our game-grid, I'm going to make 9 div elements that are these cells right here. So div class, I'm going to call this game-cell. And not only that, I'm gonna, let's see. Yeah, I'll just call them game cell for now. But I'm going to make 9 of these. So make sure you have 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And let's see what we have. So obviously right now we don't see anything here. I'm gonna inspect this. There is something in here, but because we didn't stylize it, you don't really see anything. So let's add the styling right now. Let me just pull this up as a reference. So let's first add CSS to our game grid container, game-grid. And I'm gonna make this a display grid to make it a grid. And whenever you use display grid, you gotta specify the number of columns and rows that you want on your grid. So the way that we do that is we do grid template columns and grid template rows. So we could put a couple different things here. You could, let's say we want 3 columns, right? Then what we could do is, and let's say we wanted 3 columns of 250 pixels each, we could do something like this. This is letting the CSS know that we want 3 columns, all with 250 pixels. However, we could also do this repeat function that tells us we want to repeat 3 of 1FR. So what 1FR is a relative unit. It's pretty much saying I want 3 spaces repeated with this 1FR unit. What the 1FR unit is, it equally divides the available space into equal spaces. So this is what I want. But not only for the columns, but I also want to do this for the rows. So grid template rows, like so. And how do we make this little tic-tac-toe color, this little dark grid right here? The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to introduce this thing called a grid gap, which gives gap to each of our cells. And I'm going to make this grid gap of 15 pixels, like so. Again, you're not going to see anything here, but what we can do is this. Let me try this for now. I'm going to grab my game-cell, which are all of our 9 cells, and let's give them attributes of height of 200 pixels and width of 200 pixels. And just to see them, let's put a background to them, a background color of orange for now. Yeah. So obviously this is not what we want. Let's see what happened. So the reason why this is happening is, let me zoom out real quick. The reason why this is happening is before, just to see our container, we have put a width and a height of 500 pixels. So we initially put this here because we want to see the background actually showing up on our HTML, on our page preview right here, but we don't need this anymore. From now on, we're gonna let the container's width and height be determined by its children. So if we erase this, let's see what we get. Now everything's fitting. Okay, it looks very nasty, but this is fine for now. And let's just make sure that we put some space below our status and our button with our grid. So let me go back to this, and we have within the game grid CSS, I have a margin top of 50 pixels. All right, that looks a little better. But now the question is, how do we make just this part dark and this part the same color as our container, right? So the way that I have decided to do that is I'm gonna put a background color to our grid of this primary dark color, which is 0DA192. If I do that and refresh, notice this has become a little bit darker right here, right? Now, within our game cell, let me just put this in the front. I'm gonna give a background color of my original primary color, which is 14BDAC. So let's replace this orange with that. And now we have those Tic Tac Toe, the game board as we want. Okay, so that looks pretty good. How about we make each of our cells, let's convert our cursor into a pointer as well, because to let the user know that we could click these like so. So that looks pretty good. What else do we need? I think we are done. So in terms of our CSS, for the most part, I think we are done. All right, so yeah, that looks pretty good. So now let's start adding JavaScript into our code. Okay, so we are gonna start with our JavaScript file, our app.js. And the first thing, I'm gonna break this file up into a couple of different sections. So the first section, I'm gonna put a little comment here, and I'm gonna call these the HTML elements. So this is where we're gonna be grabbing our HTML elements. So let's first grab, what do we need? We first need access to this status right here. What was the class name of this status? We called it the status, right? So let's write const status div, and we will grab that by doing document.querySelector. And what we want to select is we want to select a class of status. Just to show you guys that we grabbed the correct one, let me console log status div or status div and see what that is all about. So I'm gonna refresh the page, go to my console, ignore all this DevTools stuff, that's just from my React stuff. And we see that if we console log this, we get the div class status, right? So this is what we want. Let's also grab the reset button. Const reset div is document querySelector. We want to grab the reset button, the reset class, and let's just make sure we grab the correct one. Reset div, refresh the page, and we do get reset here. Now let's grab our 9 cells that we see here. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to call these the cell divs. So it will be an array. And the way that we grab all 9 of them is we do querySelectorAll. This will grab every single occurrence of whatever we put here. What we want, what do we call these grids? Actually, I don't remember. We have called these game cell. So I'm gonna grab all elements with the class name of game cell. Let's console log this and see what we get. we get this node list object. It looks like an array, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's 8, meaning there's 9 characters total, right? So that's what we want. So now that we have grabbed, and by the way, why did we grab this? We grabbed the status because we're gonna be using JavaScript to update this. Let's say that X has already gone, then it's O's turn, right? So it should be saying O is next here. We're gonna be grabbing this status div and changing it, manipulating, and that's why we want access to this HTML element within our JavaScript. We also want the reset button because when we click this, we want it to do something. And obviously we wanna manipulate each of these cell pieces here to whether to put an X or an O there. So these are the 3 HTML elements that we're gonna be using. Let's introduce game const variables. Game variables. We're gonna have, and I'm gonna be using let here because we're gonna be changing these around later. So let's put game is live. So I'm gonna initialize this as true. What this variable will do is if this is true, that means that the game is live right now, meaning the game is going. But let's say someone won or there was a tie game, then the game is no longer live. We will manually set this to false. We are also gonna have another Boolean, which I'm gonna call X is next. So I'm gonna initialize that as true. And what this is, if this is true, then it's X's turn. If it is false, then it's O's turn. So that's what this signifies. And I think those are the only 2 variables I need so far. If we need them later, we will add them here later. Okay, so what I am going to do is, this is what I'm going to do. Here will be our event listeners. We are going to add event listeners, first of all, to our reset button. And we're also going to add event listeners to each of our 9 cells. So let's first add a reset event listener to our reset. So let's do reset div, add event listener, and the event that we're listening for is called the click. Is whenever we click this, and we're gonna link this to a function. So let me define the function up here first. So here are our, what should we call this section here? How about we call this section event handlers? Like so. Let's put some spaces here. And the first event I'm gonna have is const handle reset. This will have E, short for event, as in parameter. And for now, let's just console log what this E is. And we're gonna link this to our click event handler on our reset. So handle reset. Just pass the function as a reference. So notice I'm not putting parentheses here. We're passing the function as a reference, like so. And so when we click this reset button, we should see a console log of E. Let's see if that happens. I see this mouse event here. And there's all these attributes associated with it. So that's working so far. So let's ignore that for now. Now let's add event listener to each of our 9 cell divs. So this is an array-like object. How do we add event listeners to each of the elements? So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm gonna use a for loop, and we're gonna do a for of loop within our cell divs. Cell divs is an array-like structure. So what we do is we do const cell div of cell divs. What this will do is this will loop through each of our elements within our cell divs, and that element will be stored in the cell div variable here. Let me console log cell div for you guys just to show you guys what is going on. Notice we have 9 console logs here, right? Of the different cells. So that's what this is looping over. And within each of our cell div, we are gonna add event listeners to each of them. Add event listener of a click. And what should we call this? Handle. What should we call this? Handle cell click, maybe. We'll put it up here. Handle cell click. This also has an E event. And for now, let's just console log E just to make sure that everything is working as intended. And it appears that it is. So how do we know which cell we have clicked? the way that I'm going to know which cell we have clicked is there is this target attribute, and within the target attribute, we have, let's see, within this target attribute, we have this class list, which gives us all the classes that this element in question has. But this right now, the way that our code is set up, we can't distinguish between each of our cells. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our index HTML, and within each of our cells, I'm going to give them special names, extra classes for each of them, just to give us a way to distinguish each one. So I'm going to put game cell space, and I'm going to give a class of the first one of maybe top left, the next one of top middle, next one is top right, middle left, middle right, bottom left, bottom middle, and bottom right. This way we can distinguish each one. Now let me refresh the page, click this again, and let's go to our event handler, which is handle cell click. I'm gonna console log not E, but e.target.classList. Let's see what we get. If I refresh, I click this one, notice we get game cell, tops, and top left. If I click this one, we get game cell and middle right, right? So, however, so what type of an object this is? This is actually an object that looks like an array, but it's not actually an array. So the index that we're interested in is not the 0th index, which is this game cell. It's the first index, because that's where everything is different, right? This tells us which section of the cell that we are looking at. So let's do this. I'm going to extract the first element, the first index element within our class list. So I'm going to do const location. I'm going to grab this from e.target.classList, the first element, like this, the first index. Let's console log our location, like so. Let's get rid of our first console log. By the way, notice I'm console logging a lot, right? So this is pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? This is pretty common in web development. You're going to be console logging a lot of stuff when you work with JavaScript. So I click here, it says top left. I click in the middle, it says middle. Click here, it says middle right, and so on. So now we know whenever we click on something and we go into our handle cell click function, we know which cell we are dealing with, right? By this location variable here. So what do we want to do? I'm going to add an extra class to our div, depending on if x is next is true in this variable that we have declared up here. If that is true, I'm going to put an x there. Otherwise, if this is false, I will put an O class in there. So this is what I'm going to do. So if x is next, if that is true, by the way, this is the same thing as saying this is triple equals to true, but as a shorthand to that, we could just put if x is next, because that is a Boolean. So if this is true, what do we want to do? We want to, let's see, let me console log the E again, because I want to grab something from the E. What I want is I want to have access to our div, which is actually inside e.target. Let me console log e.target. And you see that this e.target gives us the actual div in question, right? So what I want to do is from our e.target, I want to add a class. Get the class list first and then add a class. And the class that I'm going to add, I'm going to give it a name of x, because x is next, because x should be next. So this will let us know that this has the x value. So let's try that right now. Refresh the page. I click here. I don't see anything, but if I inspect the element, you see this x element here, right? This x class that we have added. after we have added that class, what we want to do is we want to set x is next to opposite of what it was previously. So if it was true, we want it to be false, and so on. And we will say else, if x is not next, then e.target.classList add not an x but an o. Like so. And we're also gonna be making the x is next to the opposite value, like so. So if you look at our classes here, as I click, you can see that it is adding the x and the o. But the problem is, what if we click on the same cell again? Notice what happened here. We put an XO, and then if I click here again, well, the X already exists, so it's not doing anything. But we don't want a cell to have both an X and an O value, right? So the way that I'm going to do that is this. If I'm first going to check to make sure that the element in question does not have either an X or an O. So how about we do this? I'm going to grab all the class lists in the beginning. Const classes. Class list, no, I'm going to call it class list from e.target.classList. And I'm just going to use this variable from now on. So instead of doing this e.target.classList, let's just do class list at 1. And down here, we could just do class list add and class list add, like so. We are referencing this variable from now on. All right, so what do we want to do now? What we want to do is we want to only add the X or the O if the element in question doesn't already contain either an X or an O. Hopefully that made sense. So how can we test and check to see if the element in question has the X or an O? So what we can do is this. I am going to, let's see. Let's first see whether this is an array or not. Meaning, or rather we could just do this. We know that, we know that the third element or the second index is gonna contain the O or the X. So let's do this. If class list at the second index is equal to X, or class list at the second index is equal to O, then we want to do nothing, right? Because that means that it already either contains an X or an O. So if this is the case, then we want to do nothing. And the way that we do that is just put a return in our function. So our function will end right here. Otherwise, we want them to do this. So let's see if this works. Remember what was happening before? We could add both an X or O to a single cell, which is not ideal, which is not what we want. Let me see. Let's go to our this. I'm going to click this one right here. Notice we have added the X. I click again. I can't add another one anymore. I click here. I added an O. Can't add an X back again here. So this is what we want. Like so. And now we have successfully added, or we are able to add X or O within our to our classes using JavaScript. But how do we now then visualize or display to the user that the X is here and the O is here? So we're gonna be using this thing called a pseudo element of HTML, and we're what the pseudo element in question that we're gonna be using is called the before pseudo element. We could also technically use after too. It doesn't really matter. But let me just show you guys how that works in case you guys haven't seen this before. I'm gonna grab the game cell. Each element that we grab in our CSS, we could reference the before or after pseudo element by doing semicolon, before or after, it doesn't matter. And let me just show you guys what this is. Each pseudo element of a before pseudo element or after pseudo element needs a content property, and I'm gonna just put X here, like so. Now notice we have X's everywhere. Do you see this X's here? It looks very small, but And notice within our HTML, our inspect element, we have this before element right here. So what this does is at the inside, whatever we have selected, right inside as the first element, if we use before, it adds this content that we have given in here. So let's stylize this now. But not only that, we don't want to put it on every axis like this. We only want to put the x's where there is the x. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to grab the x class and put a content for that one. Let me refresh the page. Notice there's nothing, but when I click here and there was x, now it puts an x. Let me just make this font bigger. And what font did I use before? I used 200 pixels for this one. So I'm going to do font size here, 200 pixels. Let's also grab the O before. Content is O. Font size is for this one. We'll do 200 pixels too. All right, now you see this, right? See, now we could see it. And we are seeing this using the before pseudo selector. By the way, let me just show you guys. We could have also used it after too. It doesn't really matter. You see, it still works the same. But I'll just use after. Okay, so I want to make a few changes. One, I don't like how this is on the bottom left. It doesn't look that good. This should be centered, right? Second, we're using the alphabet X and the alphabet O. And in my opinion, it doesn't look that nice. So I'm going to use another symbol here later. But let's first try to get this centered in our board. So the way that I'm going to do that is within our game cell, I'm going to also make this a display flex. And the way that I'm going to center the element inside this container, this div, is first give justified content of center. And what that will do is that will make it center horizontally, but to make it center vertically, I'm going to also give it an align items property of center. Now, if I refresh the page, now you can see that it's a little bit more centered, right? It still doesn't look too centered, to be honest. Maybe I'll fix this later. But let's deal with our second problem, which I don't like these symbols. So what I did is I Googled circle symbol here. And you can see the circle here. Let me zoom in for you guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this one because I don't know how to type that in. And I'm going to put that as a content here. Notice it looks like a perfect circle, right? And for our X symbol, I Googled X symbol again. And I'm going to use this multiplication symbol right here for the X. I think that will look a little better. By the way, if you don't want to Google this, I will put these two symbols in the description below. So you could just copy that and paste it into your code. Now let me go back to my game. Now that looks pretty better. But the only issue now is the circle looks smaller than the X. So I'm going to increase my O size by 25 pixels. And now, it still doesn't look ideal. Why is that? Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to use a different X. I don't think this is the original X that I use. Multiplication symbol. Let me Google this. There's like 100 of these X's. So I think what I want is this one maybe. Let's try that one. Again, this will be in the description below. Yeah, so I think that looks a little bit better. So at least this is working. So I'm pretty satisfied with this. Again, our game logic doesn't work. We gotta check to see after each round. We gotta check to see that, if there is a winner or not. And also, if there is a winner, then we should update the status. And not only that, when X has gone, they should say O is next, right? So let's deal with that right now. I'm going to go back to my app.js and let's see what I want to do. After every click, I want us to check to see if there is a winner or not. No, before that actually, let's update our status. this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add a function here of let's see, above here I'm gonna add a section called functions, and this first function that I want is const update game status, or how about check game status? Whoops. Check game status. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to call this after every single game move. So if someone clicks on the tile, we will invoke this function to check the status of the game. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make 9 variables, and I am going to see whether there is an X or an O in each of the 9 cells. So I'm going to do const top left is equal to, what is it? Class, not class list, our cell divs, the 0th index, and I want, what is it? Class list of the first element, of the first index. This will tell us whether it's an X or an O. Let's do this for all 9 of our elements. We have top middle, which is cell div 1. We have top right, which is cell div 2. Middle left, cell div 3. Middle, cell div 4. Middle right of cell div 5. Bottom left, cell div 6. Bottom middle of cell div 7. Bottom right of cell div 8. And just to show you guys what this is, let's console log all of these out right now. Not sure, do I have to write all these again? Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. You don't have to do this if you want. I just want to make sure we are on the right track. Middle right, bottom left, bottom middle, and bottom right. So if everything went to plan, we should see a list of whether the X's and the O's that we have, depending on the location. So now if I go to my console, I don't see anything. It's because we never invoked this function, this check game status, and where I want to check the game status is here, right? And also here. I click now, we get top left. Oh no, that's not what I want. Why am I getting? Oh, I don't want the first class list. I actually want the second one because that tells us whether we have an X or an O. Sorry about that. Like so. Now we get undefined, but we have an X in our 0th element. We have XO, and as you can see, we have what we want. So this tells us whether we have an X or an O or an undefined. So I think this is something we could work with. So let's do this. We first gotta see if there is a winner or not. Is there a winner? The way that I'm gonna check is I'm just gonna manually brute force and check all possible winning combinations. I'm gonna do this. If top left, we could do 2 ways. We could either say, make sure that, first of all, one way to win is top left, top middle, and top right is an X, or all 3 of them is an O, right? So we could either check manually to see whether they are all X's or whether they are all O's, or we could just say this. If top left exists, or rather, let me do this first. If top left is equal to top middle and top left is equal to top right, that means the top left, top middle, and the top right, they're all the same elements. But we gotta be careful here. I gotta add an extra attribute here saying, extra condition I mean, I'm going to say, make sure that the top left exists. So I'm going to do top left and top left is equal to middle and top left is equal to top right. And the reason why I have this top left condition in the beginning is if these three are all undefined, meaning we don't have anything within the first three, that means this is going to be true. Without this first condition here, if all three of them are defined, that means this part that I've highlighted here will be true. Undefined is triple equals to undefined, and undefined is triple equals to undefined. So we got to make sure that the element in question is not undefined. And the way that we do that is we make sure we check. Because if this is undefined, then this will become false, and we will never go in here. And I don't like this. Is there a winner comment? Let's say check winner. So if this is the situation, we now know that we're dealing either with an X or an O, right? So what should we do then? The value of the top left. Let me console log top left here. And this will only console log if all the top is the same. So let's just put X's on the top, like so. Now we see X. So now the value of our top left is X. And in reverse, if we put O's there, it should be O, as you can see here. So this is what we'll do. I'm gonna put here, let winner, and I'm gonna make this null. I will say that winner is going to be whatever the top left value is. What else do we want to do? Before we do that, actually, I want to set game is live is false. Meaning if there is a winner, our game is live should be false. And we want to do a couple more things, right? We want to get our status div and update the inner HTML to say, what do we want to say? And I'm going to use ES6 string interpolation here by using backticks. I will say that top left, the variable has 1. Let's see what we get then. So I'm going to make X win and focus on what goes in our status here. And now it says X has 1. But I don't like this in several reasons. One, we're using the alphabet X. And second, that's it for now. So let's update that for now. And because I'm going to be referencing our two symbols of this X and this O, what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract them out to our JavaScript variable. So I'm going to put here game constants. These are variables that won't change. Const X symbol is going to be this little cross thing, and const O symbol is going to be this perfect circle here, like so. And be careful, don't use these symbols in the class list. Notice we are checking the class list here. I wouldn't use the symbols on the class list. I don't even know if that's possible or not, but I'm not going to try. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, let's see, make another function here called letter to symbol. What this will do is this will get a letter, which is either going to be X or O alphabet, and it will, if the letter is triple equals to X, I'm going to use ternary operator here, then the output of this function is going to be the X symbol. Otherwise, we're going to give the Y symbol. So this will convert our X or O to the symbol counterpart. So instead of saying top left as 1 here, let's use our letter to symbol function and pass our top left like so. Now, if we play our game and let X win, we should see that X symbol has 1, right? Let's see. If O wins, however, I don't want to use the black text. I want to use O's color. And not only that, I want these O's to be at different colors as well here. So let's actually take care of that first. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to my style.css And for our O after, I'm going to give it a color property of what was our beige white color? It is this F2EBD3. Let's see if that works. Now it looks a little better, right? And let's make it so that when O wins, this becomes white. So the way that I'm going to do that is go back to our app, and I'm gonna check this. How should we do this? Let's do this. If top left is equal to X, I'm gonna put status inner div as that, else put the status inner div not as this, but I'm gonna put a span around it like so. Whoops, like so. And let me put this into its own line like so. I don't know if that looks any better or not. Actually, I changed my mind. That doesn't look too good. Let me put spaces after this one, like so. I think that looks a little better. Okay, so by the way, I'm only doing this because I'm so zoomed in that this doesn't fill up a line. So for you, this shouldn't be an issue. And let's stylize our span. So where does this span occur? So it occurs right here. If I look in here, oh, whoops, we need someone to win. So let me do this. Let's make sure that O wins. If you look at this right now, we see a span here, right? So that's what we want here. Granted, we're putting this extra space, so sorry about me constantly changing my mind. Let me just get rid of this space, actually. I don't want that. Let's just leave it in one line like so. And we're gonna stylize that span. So we're gonna go back to our CSS, go to our status. We're gonna add a new selector here called status space, and we want the span inside our status class. And for this, we want the color to be white, like so. F2EBD3. Let's see if that becomes white, if O wins. Yep, yeah, it becomes white. And if X wins, it stays as black, like so. Now, also, before we go on, let's finish our logic of all of our winnings. So we only check to see if the top three are equal. We gotta check for every single other ones. So how should we do this? I'm gonna have a lot of duplicated code. So what I'm gonna do is right below our if here, we're gonna put else if. Let's check all of our 3 rows first, and then we'll check our vertical ones and finally our diagonals. So we're gonna say middle left, and middle left is triple equals to middle middle, and middle left is triple equals to, not quadruple, but triple equals to middle right. Then we're gonna have this duplicated code again, right? So probably we should make another function to take care of all these duplications, because we're gonna have this. How many ways are there to win? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I don't want to duplicate this 8 times. So we're gonna make another function here. And I'm gonna call this function const handle win. And this will receive a parameter, which is the letter that has 1. It's either gonna be X or O. And what I'm gonna do here is first set the game is live to false, winner as the letter, and finally we're gonna do this. All this crazy logic here. If the winner is triple equals to X, then not winner, sorry about that. Yeah, why not? We'll use winner. Because we have assigned letter to winner anyways. And all references up top left, we will update that with winner, like so. So we could erase this complicated logic here. Where is it? Right here. and we will say handle win. And we will pass in the top left, which will either be X or an O. So else if middle left is equal to middle left and all this, then handle win middle left. Else if bottom left and make sure you write these carefully. Bottom left is equal to bottom middle, and bottom left is triple equals to bottom right. Handle win bottom left. We have taken care of our 3 horizontal wins. Now let's take care of our 3 vertical wins. Else if, let's see, top left is, and top left is triple equals to middle left, and top left is triple equals to bottom left. That's our first horizontal case. Top left. Else if top, not top. Top middle, I mean, is equal, and top middle is triple equals to middle middle, and top middle is triple equals to bottom middle. And the win. Oh, whoops, spelling error here. Sorry about that. Top middle, and our final vertical case, which is right, top right. Top right is triple equals to middle right, and top right is triple equals to bottom right. Handle win. Top right. And now finally our 2 vertical cases. Else if top left and top left is equal to middle middle, and top left is triple equals to bottom right. Handle win. Top left. And finally our last diagonal case and last winning condition. Else if is top right, and top right is triple equals to middle middle, and top right is triple equals to bottom left. Make sure you have written all these carefully. Otherwise, if you don't, then your winning logic is all messed up. Handle win top right, like so. All right, so we have taken care of our 8 winning conditions. Now there is another condition that we got to account for, which is what if there's a tie? And when will there be a tie? There will be a tie when none of these are undefined. If none of these 8 cases pass and all these are not undefined, meaning they have an X or an O value, then we are dealing with a tie. So I'm going to put another else if here, and we're going to now check to see if these all have a value. So we're going to say top left and top middle and top right, and sorry about the redundancy here, middle left and middle middle and middle right and bottom left and bottom middle and bottom right. If all these have a value, then we are dealing with a tie. So how are we going to deal with the tie? We're going to first set game is live to false. We're going to update the inner span of our status div, the inner HTML. Status div inner HTML, we're going to update it to say game, what should we write in there? Game is tied. How about that? Let's see if that works. I'm going to try my best to tie the game. X, O, X, O, X, O, X, O, X. Okay, game is tied. Okay, so that works now. Okay, and finally, if we have no winner and the game is not tied, our final condition is just the game continues, right? So what we want to do in this case is we want to, what should we do? What should we do? We want to first, let's erase this logic within our handle cell click where we are manually setting the x is next to this opposite value. I'm going to erase this and I'm going to let the check game status function that we are building right now handle that condition. So let's do this. Where were we? Oh, right here, else. We want to do this. X is next is first going to be opposite of X is next to flip the logic. That's what we just erased. And also we got to update the status divs in our HTML. So this is what I'm going to do. If the new X is next is triple equals to an X, I'm going to do status div inner HTML is going to equal string interpolation ES6 letter to symbol of X. No, we don't even need the letter to symbol. We could just use the actual X symbol is next like that. Else, that means that O's turn is next. Oh, whoops. And I don't want this to be equal to, X is next to the Boolean. So I'm just going to check to see if that is true. And status this. Otherwise, I'm going to put a span across our string to make it white. Like so. But I'm going to use the O symbol this time. Let's see if that works. Now notice this is turning white. So that's what I wanted. However, when I play the game, I'm noticing a very annoying thing where this grid goes up and down by a little bit. And the reason why that is happening is when the HTML adds its span to the white O, it's changing the height of our status action. Right now it's 29, but I click somewhere and now it's 30. We can't, like right now it is 30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the status action a fixed height of 30 pixels. That way the game won't jitter anymore. Okay, so we are almost done. Let's make sure our reset button works. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to update our, where is our reset event handler? Right here, handle reset. Let's take care of this. So what do we want to do when we click reset? Let's see. When we click reset, we want to set X is next to true. We want to always make the first person that starts the game to be X. Well, it just makes life simpler. And we want to, of course, update our status div as to X is next. And also, what we want to do is we have to loop through each of our cells, each of our 9 cells, and remove either the X or O class. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to put a for loop here. And let's do this. For, what do we call it? The cell divs, right? Const cell div of cell divs. And I'm going to loop through each of our div and grab the class list and remove the X class if it exists. If it doesn't exist, it won't do anything. And also remove the O class. And what else do I want to do? Let's see. I also have this winner right here, right? Did I handle the winner? Yes, I did handle the winner. So I want to set the winner back to null. And I think that's it. So let's see if that works. So first, as I'm playing, I click reset and it clears everything out. So I think it is working. Now, what if we have a winner? If I could just get a winner. So now O has won, I reset, and the game is reset again. So that is working too. And it appears that we never actually needed to use the location. So forgive me for backtracking, but I'm going to erase that. And because we have erased that actually, I want us to tidy up our code somewhat. This is optional, but I just want to do it because I have realized now that this top left, top middle, top right is useless. So I'm going to erase all of those again. So again, sorry about that. But this happens whenever you're coding sometimes. You decide later that you don't need a couple attributes. So I'm going to erase these. And I gotta be careful now because going back to my class list is our X under the O is no longer on the second index, but it's actually on the first index. And let's make sure that, so I changed it in the handle cell click. And where else do we reference the class list? We reference it here. So I gotta change all of these class lists back to a 1. Because we removed the class, the X or the O now resides in the first index. So I think let's just make sure that everything is working. Let's make sure that the game knows who won. Yep, yeah, it still knows who won. All right, so that was a little bit of refactoring we did, a little bit of tidying up. And now I think we're almost done. The one final thing, or the second final thing, we also have the responsive stuff to do after this. But one final thing of the CSS that I want to do is if someone wins, I want this to turn red to kind of show which combination has produced the winner. So the way that I'm going to do that is within our check game status and within these, I have to do something. So this is not going to be pretty, but within each of our if conditions, I'm going to add a new class to our cells, to our divs, and I'm going to say that the class that we're going to add is called 1. So I'm going to but I got to manually grab them. So I'm going to say in the first condition, the cell divs 0th index class list of add. And I'm going to add the 1. And I want the first one. I want the second one. And also for our second win condition, I got to be very careful. This accounts for the middle horizontal winning. So that is 3, 4, 5. The next one is 6, 7, 8. And the next one is the top left, middle left, and bottom left. So it's 0, 3, 6. Next one is 1, 4, 7. And the next one is 2, 5, 8. And finally, we got our 2 diagonal cases. We have 0, whoops. I think it's 4 and 8. And finally, we have 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, and 6. Like so. And if we have a class of 1, let's go to our CSS and let's do this. If we have a 1 class, I want the color of the after to be red. And the red that I'm going to be using, referencing my little PDF file, is BD022F, like so. Let's see if that works. Make X win, and it becomes red, so it works. The only problem now is when I reset, I want to also get rid of that. So the way that I'm going to do that is go back to my app. When we do handle reset, we also not only want to remove the X's on the O class, I also want to remove the 1 class. So let's see if that works. X has 1, reset, and now let's let O win. Ah, crap. Okay, O has 1. So that seems to work. Yeah. Okay, so now we are almost done. Our game, I think the logic of our game is fully complete. Now let's just add the responsiveness. So the way that I'm going to do that is I am going to go back to my CSS. I'm going to add media queries here. I'm going to add 2 media queries, one for like a tablet size and one for a phone size. So I'm going to do media only screen and max width. And I have decided to use 1024 for our tablet size. So whatever CSS that we add here, it will only apply if the max width of our window is less than 1024 pixels. So using my little blueprint template here, I'm just going to add these here. I'm going to do game grid. We'll have a margin top of 25 pixels, grid gap of 10 pixels. Let's see, game cell of height of 150 pixels, width of 150 pixels. And finally, our X after, not before this time, because I decided to use after for whatever reason, font size of 150 pixels. And for our O, font size of 175 pixels. Let's see that come to play. I'm going to zoom out back to its original. Okay, there we go. Notice the size right now, but once I go lower than 1024, it should shrink like so. And everything should still be working like that. Okay, let's add one more. One for our tablet. Our phone, media only screen, and max width is going to be, let's see, what did I decide to use? 540. I'm gonna grab my container. It's gonna have a margin of 25 and a padding of 25 this time. Game cell is gonna be even smaller. Height of 100 pixels, width of 100 pixels. X after is going to have a font size of 100 pixels now. And O after is going to have a font size of 125 pixels. Let's see if that works. All right, and there we go. And the game is still fully functional, like so. Okay, so this was our Tic Tac Toe game. So I was editing this video and I realized a couple things I've missed in my initial run of making this game. So I want to add those fixes right now to make this really tidy this game up. So if I refresh the page right now, look at this X. Do you see this, how ugly this X is right here? And the reason why this X is ugly is because we're using the alphabet X in the beginning. The reason is usually we always update this value using JavaScript except the very beginning. So going back to my index.html file, let me erase all these readmes and everything that I've added later. Notice I'm using the alphabet X next here. So we have to update this in the beginning to be consistent. So I'm going to go to my style.css file. Try to find my symbol, which is here, the X symbol. Copy that and paste that over here so that now when I refresh, it looks consistent. So that was problem number 1 that I saw. So problem number 2 that I saw is this. So this is optional, but just to be consistent with our cursor UI buttons. Do you remember what we did for our grids? When we hover over them, our cursor becomes a pointer, right? To let the user know that we could press these. But the moment we press one, this is no longer able to be pressed right here. So that we shouldn't let the user know that this is a pointer still. We should disable this and make the cursor go back to its default when there is either an X or O value, or as a matter of fact, even a 1 value. So let's do that now. Actually, we don't have to do the 1 value because 1 value will always have an X or O. So let's do this. X after, we are gonna say, what is the best way to do this actually? Let's do this. If game cell, no, we'll just do this. If X or O, not Y, but O, then we'll say the cursor is back to default. Let's see if that worked. I'm gonna refresh the page. Right now it's a pointer. I click and it didn't work. So default is not a valid attribute for cursor. I think I want auto. Let me refresh the page. And it's still, oh, maybe it's because I didn't hard refresh. Maybe default did work. Okay, so now it's working. I'm curious, did default work? Let me try default. I'm gonna hard refresh. Yes, so default works as well. So it's up to you whether you want to use default or auto. But the point being, it is no longer a pointer when we hover over those ones. Even if you win, it's still not a pointer, right? As a matter of fact, if the game is won, technically, oh, look at that. That's another issue. If someone has won, we shouldn't be able to click here anymore. So let's fix that right now. Within our check game, no, not check game status, within our event handlers, in the handle cell click, we should only do stuff inside if the game is live. So we have this condition in the beginning that says if the class list that we clicked has an X or O, then don't do anything by returning, right? But let's add a new condition here. Why don't we add in the beginning by saying if not game is live, then also return. So let's see if that works now. Yep, it's still not working. So why is that the case? Perhaps we didn't update game is live. Let's see. Where is our handle win? Our handle win is here. We put game is live is false. So maybe I have to hard refresh again. That's kind of annoying. But let's see if that works now. Okay, so that works. I don't know why it's forcing me to hard reset every single time. But now, if the game is not live, we can't click anywhere anymore. So that it's good. And one final thing that I want to refactor, technically we could make this not be a pointer again, but that's just too much work. I don't want to do that right now. What I mean is, if someone has won, we shouldn't make these pointers anymore, but whatever. What I do want to do though is, I have noticed when I was editing this video that we never actually use this winner variable. So we could just erase this, because once we find out someone has won, we just write that person has won. We never use this winner. So let's do this. I'm going to erase this winner variable, erase this within the handle win, and instead of referencing winner here, we reference winner in 3 different places in the handle win function. I'm going to grab every single one, and I'm just going to replace them with letter, like so. Now, where else do we have the winner? Right here. Handle reset. We have set the winner back to null, but we don't need to do that anymore. Do we have winners anywhere else? No, we don't. Let's just make sure that the game works still. I'm going to win, reset, and it doesn't work anymore. Now, the reason why it doesn't work is why. When we handle reset, we should also set the game is live back to true, right? When we reset, we want the game to be on. So let's do game is live is true. Let's, as a matter of fact, do this at the very end, although it doesn't really matter. Let's make sure our game is working. I reset and we can still play. All right, so I think that is it with our refactoring and making our code a little better. I think that is it. If you guys find any other optimizations or refactors that we can do, or mistakes that you have found in this code, please let me know in the description, the comment section below. I would love to see that. And if you decide to, by the way, feel free to use this in your own personal projects. You could put it in your portfolios. I highly encourage you to add some other more fancy styling if you want, and show me, let me know by posting in the comment section below. And if you post a link to your GitHub or whatever, I would love to check it out. Anyways, back to the video where I say the outro. All right, guys, so this was our Tic Tac Toe game. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Hopefully everything made sense. I'm gonna make a GitHub repo and put the finished code along with an updated, a fixed version of this little blueprint right here, if you want to follow along. So I'll put that in the links in the description below. And hopefully, guys, you guys like this content. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more tutorials like this. I'll be releasing a couple more beginner-friendly tutorials with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in the next few days. So please stay tuned for that, guys. Have a good day, stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time.